My name is Savannah, and at 32 years old, I still remember every detail of that scorching August afternoon when I was 8. Standing at that gas station watching my mother's blue Honda disappear into the shimmering heat of the highway, her words echoing in my mind. "Let's see if she can find her way home," she had said, like it was some cruel game. 24 years later, the tables would turn completely. Before I continue, where are you watching from today? Please hit like and subscribe if stories of survival and redemption speak to your heart. That morning had started like any other summer day in our modest Denver home. The sun filtered through the thin curtains of my bedroom, creating dancing patterns on the faded pink wallpaper. I remember stretching in my twin bed, feeling the worn cotton sheets against my skin, completely unaware that this would be the last morning I would ever wake up in that room. My mother, Patricia, was already in the kitchen when I padded downstairs in my favorite Minnie Mouse pajamas. She was 31, then still beautiful, despite the bitterness that had settled into the corners of her eyes after my father left us 6 months earlier. The divorce had changed her. The warm mother who used to braid my hair and sing me lullabies had been replaced by someone cold and distant, someone who looked at me like I was a burden she hadn't asked for. But that morning was different. She smiled at me, actually smiled as she poured milk over my cereal. "Good morning, sunshine," she said, using the pet name she hadn't called me in months. "How about we do something special today? Just you and me." My 8-year-old heart soared. Maybe she was finally getting better. Maybe she was finally ready to love me again the way she used to. I nodded eagerly, milk dribbling down my chin in my excitement. "Where are we going, Mommy? Shopping," she said, turning away to rinse dishes in the sink. "Maybe get some ice cream. Would you like that?" I practically bounced in my chair. "Yes, yes, yes. Can I wear my butterfly dress?" She nodded, still not looking at me. "Sure, baby. Wear whatever makes you happy." I raced upstairs, my feet thundering on the wooden steps. The butterfly dress was my absolute favorite, a pink sundress with embroidered butterflies along the hem that my grandmother had sent for my birthday. I pulled it on carefully, making sure not to catch the delicate fabric on anything. I even attempted to brush my long brown hair into something resembling neatness, though several stubborn tangles remained. When I came back downstairs, my mother was packing my small backpack, the purple one with the worn-out zipper. "Just some snacks for the road," she explained when I asked. "You know how you always get hungry on long drives." "But I thought we were just going shopping." She paused for a moment, her hands stilling on the backpack. "Well, I thought we might drive out a bit, see some different stores. Make an adventure of it." An adventure. The word filled me with anticipation. We hadn't had an adventure in so long, not since Daddy left and took all the adventures with him. The car ride started wonderfully. My mother was chattier than she'd been in months, asking me about school, about my friends, about what I wanted to be when I grew up. She even let me pick the radio station, something she never did. We sang along to Whitney Houston, our voices blending in the small space of the car. About 30 minutes into the drive, she started asking strange questions. "Savannah," she said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Do you think you're a smart girl?" "I think so," I replied, confused by the question. "Mrs. Anderson says I'm one of her best readers." "That's good. Smart girls can figure things out on their own, can't they? They don't always need someone holding their hand." "I guess so," I said, though something in her tone made my stomach feel funny. She continued with these odd questions as we drove. "What would you do if you got lost? Do you remember our home address? Do you know how to ask for help?" At the time, I thought she was just making conversation, maybe even teaching me important safety lessons. I answered each question earnestly, proud to show her how much I knew. We stopped at an ATM about an hour into the drive. She withdrew what looked like a lot of money, counting the bills twice, before stuffing most of them into her wallet. Then she turned to me and handed me a $20 bill. "Here," she said, pressing it into my small hand. "This is for emergencies. You keep this in your backpack and don't spend it on candy, understand?" I nodded solemnly, carefully tucking the bill into the small front pocket of my backpack. Having my own money made me feel grown up and important. As we continued driving, the scenery changed from suburban neighborhoods to open highway. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow even in August. My mother started talking about nature, about how some animals leave their young to fend for themselves once they reach a certain age. Like birds, she said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Baby birds get pushed out of the nest so they can learn to fly. If they stayed in the nest forever, they'd never learn to survive. That sounds mean, I said, frowning at the thought of baby birds falling from trees. It's not mean, it's nature. It's how they learn to be strong. I didn't like this conversation. It made me think of the documentary we'd watched in school about sea turtles, how the babies had to crawl to the ocean all by themselves while seagulls tried to eat them. It had made me cry, and Mrs. Anderson had to take me to the nurse's office to calm down. "Well, I'm glad people don't do that," I said firmly. "I'm glad you'll always take care of me." My mother didn't respond. She just stared at the road ahead, her jaw clenched tight. I should have known then that something was terribly wrong. But I was 8, and I still believed that mothers always protected their children, that love was unconditional, that being abandoned was something that only happened in fairy tales to children who weren't real. How wrong I was. How terribly, devastatingly wrong. The gas station appeared on the horizon like a mirage in the desert, a small oasis of concrete and neon along the endless stretch of Interstate 70. It was one of those isolated truck stops that serviced long-haul drivers and desperate travelers 40 miles from Denver and seemingly in the middle of nowhere. The sign read, "Last Chance Gas," which would prove to be ironically prophetic. My mother pulled into the parking lot, the car's tires crunching over loose gravel. The afternoon sun was brutal, making waves of heat rise from the asphalt. She parked near the store entrance, leaving the engine running. "I need to get gas," she said, her voice strange and tight. "You need to use the bathroom, Savannah." "I don't have to go," I protested, not wanting to leave the air-conditioned comfort of the car. She turned around sharply, her eyes hard. "I said you need to use the bathroom. Go. Now." The force of her words made me shrink back. "Okay, Mommy." I unbuckled my seatbelt and slid out of the car, my backpack bouncing against my shoulders. The heat hit me like a physical force, making me gasp. The asphalt burned through the thin soles of my sandals as I hurried toward the store entrance. The inside of the gas station was blessed relief cold air conditioning that made goosebumps rise on my arms. An elderly man sat behind the counter, his name tag reading Harold. He smiled at me kindly, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Hello there, little miss. Hot enough for you out there." I nodded, suddenly shy. "My mommy told me to use the bathroom." "Right back there, sweetheart," he said, pointing to a narrow hallway. "Take your time." The bathroom was surprisingly clean for a truck stop with bright fluorescent lights and a strong smell of disinfectant. I didn't really need to go, but I went anyway, then spent a long time washing my hands with the pink soap, fascinated by how it foamed. I made bubble beards on my face in the mirror, giggling at my reflection. When I came out, Harold was restocking candy bars near the register. The display was mesmerizing, rows and rows of bright wrappers promising chocolate and caramel and peanut butter. I stood there transfixed, trying to decide if I should ask my mother for a treat. "Looking for something special?" Harold asked. "I like Butterfingers," I said, "but Mommy doesn't usually let me have candy before dinner." "Well, what if I told you we're having a special today? 2 for 1 on all candy bars. Maybe that would convince her." "Really?" My eyes widened with excitement. I spent the next 5 minutes in serious deliberation, weighing the merits of Butterfingers against Snickers, debating whether Skittles counted as candy bars. Harold patiently answered my questions about which ones had nuts, which were the newest, which were his favorites. Finally, I settled on a Butterfinger and a package of M&Ms, clutching them triumphantly as I headed for the door. That's when I saw her. My mother's blue Honda was at the exit of the parking lot, brake lights glowing red. She wasn't at the gas pump. She hadn't gotten gas at all. I ran outside, the candy falling from my hands, bouncing across the hot pavement. "Mommy!" I shouted. "Mommy, wait!" She must have heard me because the car stopped. The driver's side window rolled down slowly, and she looked at me through it. Her face was strange, cold, and distant, like she was looking at a stranger, not her daughter. I reached the car, panting in the heat, my hand reaching for the door handle. It was locked. "Mommy, you forgot me," I said, confusion making my voice small. She smiled then, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was something else, something that made my blood turn cold despite the scorching temperature. "I didn't forget you, Savannah. I'm leaving you here." The words didn't make sense. They bounced around in my head like ping-pong balls, refusing to settle into meaning. What, Mommy? I don't understand. You're a smart girl, remember? You told me you're smart, so let's see if you can find your way home. Smart girls figure things out. Mommy, please, I started crying. My hands pressed against the hot glass of the window. Please don't leave me. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. This isn't about being good or bad, she said, already shifting the car into drive. This is about survival. You need to learn to survive without me. But I'm only 8, I screamed, terror making my voice crack. I was younger than that when I had to figure things out on my own, she said. Consider yourself lucky. Then she drove away. Just like that. No goodbye, no last hug, no explanation beyond those cruel words. I ran after the car, my sandals slapping against the asphalt, my lungs burning from the heat and exertion. I ran until I tripped over a crack in the pavement, falling hard, my knee scraping against the rough ground. I lay there on the burning asphalt, blood seeping from my skinned knee, watching my mother's car disappear into the shimmering heat of the highway. She never hit the brakes. She never looked back. She just drove away like I was nothing, like 8 years of my life meant nothing, like all the times I'd told her I loved her meant nothing. I don't know how long I lay there crying. Time seemed to stop in that moment, the world narrowing down to just me and my pain and the terrible understanding that my mother had left me here on purpose, that this wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was planned. Eventually, Harold found me. I heard his footsteps approaching, saw his concerned face hovering above me. "Oh, sweet Lord," he muttered, kneeling beside me, despite what must have been considerable effort for his old bones. "What happened, honey? Where's your mama?" "She left me," I whispered the words, feeling like glass in my throat. "She left me here and told me to find my way home." His face changed then, shifting from concern to horror to a deep, burning anger. He helped me to my feet, his weathered hands gentle despite their obvious strength. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you inside and cleaned up. We're going to call for help." "She's coming back," I insisted, as he led me inside, even though I knew it wasn't true. "She just forgot. She'll remember and come back." Harold didn't argue with me. He just guided me to a chair behind the counter away from the windows where customers might see me crying. He retrieved a first aid kit and carefully cleaned my scraped knee, his movements practiced and efficient. This might sting a little, he warned before applying antiseptic. It did sting, but not nearly as much as the wound in my heart. Physical pain I could understand. It had a source, a treatment, an endpoint. But this other pain, this emotional agony of abandonment, I had no framework for understanding it. Harold called the police while I sat there pressing a cold bottle of water against my flushed cheeks. I heard him speaking in low, urgent tones, giving the address, describing my mother's car, his voice thick with barely controlled fury. Within 20 minutes, a police cruiser pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing, but sirens off. Officer Maria Gonzalez entered the store, and the moment I saw her kind brown eyes, I broke down completely. The full weight of what had happened crashed over me like a tidal wave. Officer Gonzalez was everything my mother wasn't in that moment. Warm, patient, gentle. She sat with me for over an hour, letting me cry myself empty while Harold kept bringing me tissues and juice boxes from the store cooler. She didn't push me to talk, didn't demand answers I didn't have. She just sat there, a steady presence in my chaos. When I finally could speak coherently, she asked me simple questions. What was my full name? Savannah Rose Martinez. Did I know my address? 4572 Maple Street, Denver, Colorado, 80220. Did I have any other family? My grandma lived in Texas, but I didn't know her address or phone number. She wrote everything down in a small notebook, nodding encouragingly. "You're doing great, Savannah. You're being very brave." But I didn't feel brave. I felt small and broken and utterly lost. How could my mother just leave me? Had I been that bad? Was I such a terrible daughter that abandoning me at a gas station seemed like the only option? Officer Gonzalez made numerous phone calls, each one revealing more of the horrible truth. The apartment my mother and I had shared had been emptied that morning. The landlord said Patricia had given notice a week ago, paid the final month's rent in cash. She'd told him we were moving to California for a fresh start. My school had been notified that I was transferring all my records requested to be sent to a school in Los Angeles that, as it turned out, didn't exist. My mother had planned this. Every detail had been arranged to make it seem like we'd simply moved away, not that she'd abandoned her 8-year-old daughter at a truck stop. The investigation revealed that my mother had cleaned out her bank account, sold everything valuable we owned, and essentially erased herself from our life in Denver. The only thing she'd left behind was me. As the reality sank in, I became hysterical. I screamed until my throat was raw, threw the juice boxes against the wall, tried to run out of the store to chase after a car that was long gone. Officer Gonzalez had to physically restrain me, holding me against her chest while I beat my small fists against her bulletproof vest. "I want my mommy," I screamed over and over. "I want my mommy. Please, I'll be good. I promise I'll be good." But no amount of promising could bring her back. No amount of being good could undo what she'd done. I was alone in the world in a way I'd never imagined possible. Child Protective Services arrived as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed too beautiful for such an ugly day. The social worker, a tired-looking woman named Janet, spoke in hushed tones with Officer Gonzalez while I sat numbly on Harold's stool, staring at nothing. "We have an emergency placement available," Janet said, approaching me slowly, like I was a wild animal that might bolt. "There's a very nice lady named Mrs. Thompson who takes care of children who need a safe place to stay. Would you like to go with me to meet her?" "I don't want to meet her," I said dully. "I want my mom." "I know, sweetie. I know you do." Harold knelt in front of me, then pressing something into my hand. It was a small teddy bear from the store's toy section, brown and soft with a red bow around its neck. "You take this, okay?" he said, his voice rough with emotion. "And you remember that not everyone in this world is like, not everyone leaves. Some people stay. Some people care." I clutched the bear to my chest as Janet led me to her car. Harold and Officer Gonzalez stood in the doorway of the gas station watching us go. I pressed my face against the window as we drove away, watching the Last Chance gas sign grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Mrs. Thompson's house was in a suburb of Denver, a tidy ranch-style home with a fence around the yard and flowers in window boxes. It looked like the kind of house where happy families lived, where mothers tucked their children in at night and fathers read bedtime stories. It looked nothing like the apartment I'd shared with my mother with its water-stained ceilings and perpetually broken air conditioning. Mrs. Thompson herself was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She didn't try to hug me or pretend everything was okay. She simply showed me to a small bedroom with twin beds, one of which was already occupied by another girl about my age. "This is Lucy," Mrs. Thompson said. "She's going to be your roommate for now. Lucy, this is Savannah." Lucy looked at me with knowing eyes, the eyes of another child who'd been left behind. "Hi," she said simply. "Did your parents leave you too?" "My mom," I whispered. She nodded, like this made perfect sense. "Mine was my dad. He left me at a mall, said he was going to get coffee and never came back." We stared at each other for a moment, two abandoned children recognizing something fundamental in each other. Then Lucy scooted over on her bed and patted the space beside her. "Want to see my collection?" she asked, pulling out a shoebox from under the bed. "I keep stuff from the places I've been." I sat beside her as she showed me ticket stubs and postcards, smooth rocks and pressed flowers, each one representing a foster home or group facility she'd lived in. It was the saddest collection I'd ever seen, but also somehow the most hopeful. Proof that she'd survived. Evidence that life continued even after the unthinkable happened. That first night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's cold smile through the car window. I heard her words echoing, "Let's see if she can find her way home." But I couldn't find my way home because home didn't exist anymore. Home was supposed to be where your mother was, and my mother was gone. In the darkness, I opened my backpack for the first time since arriving. Inside, I found the change of clothes my mother had packed, my toothbrush, and the $20 bill she'd given me. At the very bottom, folded small, was a piece of paper. With shaking hands, I unfolded it. Her handwriting was neat, controlled. "You're better off without me. Don't try to find me. Make something of yourself." That was it. 3 sentences to end 8 years of being my mother. 3 sentences to justify abandoning me like I was an unwanted pet dropped off at a shelter. I crumpled the note and threw it across the room, then immediately scrambled to retrieve it. As much as I hated it, it was the only thing I had left of her. The next morning, Mrs. Thompson helped me understand what would happen next. There would be court hearings to legally terminate my mother's parental rights. Attempts would be made to locate my father, though given that he'd disappeared to avoid child support success seemed unlikely. My grandmother in Texas would be contacted, though Mrs. Thompson warned me gently that elderly relatives often couldn't take on the responsibility of raising a child. In the meantime, I would stay here in this house with 3 other abandoned children. I would go to a new school, where I'd have to explain why my emergency contact had changed, why my mother never came to parent-teacher conferences, why I couldn't participate in mother-daughter events. I would become that girl whose mom left her at a gas station, a cautionary tale whispered about at PTA meetings, a tragedy that made other parents hug their children a little tighter while secretly thanking God it wasn't them. But I would survive, because what else was there to do? My mother had presented this as a test, a challenge to see if I could find my way home. What she didn't understand was that she'd destroyed the very concept of home for me. You can't find your way back to something that no longer exists. So instead, I would have to build something new. Starting from nothing at 8 years old in a stranger's house with a teddy bear from a gas station and $20 in my pocket. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And unlike my mother's love, no one could take it away from me. The next 4 years passed in a blur of different faces, different homes, different sets of rules to memorize and adapt to, Mrs. Thompson's house lasted 6 months before her husband's job transferred them to Seattle. She cried when she told me, swearing she'd keep me if she could, but the state wouldn't allow foster children to move across state lines without complicated legal procedures. My second placement was with the Johnsons, a young couple who thought fostering would prepare them for having their own children. They learned quickly that a traumatized 9-year-old who woke up screaming from nightmares wasn't quite the practice run they'd imagined. They lasted 3 months before deciding they weren't ready for parenthood in any form. Then came the group home, a converted Victorian house in downtown Denver that housed 12 girls between ages 8 and 16. It was there I learned to sleep with one eye open to hide anything valuable, to never show weakness. The older girls were hardened by years in the system, and they had no patience for a little girl who still cried for her mother at night. But it was also there that I discovered my escape books. The group home had a small library donated by well-meaning volunteers, and I devoured every single book on those shelves. I read while the other girls fought over the television read, during the chaos of communal meals, read under my covers with a flashlight when the nightmares wouldn't let me sleep. In books, mothers didn't abandon their daughters at gas stations. In books, there were happy endings. My grades became my armor. Teachers, it turned out, paid attention to foster kids who excelled academically. They offered extra help, wrote recommendation letters, sometimes even bought me school supplies with their own money. My 4th grade teacher, Miss Coleman, was the first person to tell me I could go to college. "You're brilliant, Savannah," she said after I'd won the school spelling bee. "Don't let anyone tell you differently. Your circumstances don't define your potential." I held on to those words like a lifeline through the next placement, with the Martins, an elderly couple who meant well, but were overwhelmed by the energy of a 10-year-old. Then the Washingtons, who had 4 biological children and treated me like an unpaid babysitter. Then the emergency placement with a woman named Carol, who spent the entire 2 weeks I was there, drunk and crying about her own problems. By the time I turned 12, I'd lived in 9 different homes. I could pack everything I owned in 10 minutes flat. I knew which possessions to hide, which families would feed you properly, which ones would forget you existed. I knew how to forge permission slips, how to get free lunch at school without anyone asking questions, how to look presentable, even when you'd worn the same clothes 3 days in a row. That's when the Andersons entered my life. They were different from the start. For one thing, they didn't pretend we were going to be a happy family. Robert was the accountant, practical and methodical. Susan was a librarian, quiet and observant. They'd never been able to have children, had gone through years of failed fertility treatments before deciding to adopt an older child who needed stability. "We'd like to offer you permanency," Robert said during our first meeting. "Not just foster care, adoption if you're willing." I stared at them suspiciously. "Why me?" I asked. "I'm not a cute little kid. I have issues. I don't trust people." Susan smiled softly. "We're not looking for cute. We're looking for someone who needs what we can offer. Structure education opportunity. We can't promise to heal your trauma, Savannah, but we can promise you'll never be abandoned again." It took 6 months of living with them before I believed it might be true. 6 months of them showing up day after day. 6 months of Susan quietly leaving books on my bed that she thought I'd like. 6 months of Robert helping with math homework without getting frustrated when I struggled. 6 months of regular meals and consistent bedtimes, and nobody screaming or drinking or disappearing. The adoption was finalized on my 13th birthday. The judge asked if I wanted to change my last name to Anderson. I thought about it for a long moment, then shook my head. Martinez was the only thing left from my life before. Even if my mother had thrown me away, I wouldn't throw away the last piece of who I'd been. High school with the Andersons was stable in a way I'd never experienced. I had my own room that I could decorate however I wanted. I had clothes that fit properly, school supplies that weren't from donation bins, a computer for homework. I had parents who came to parent-teacher conferences, who helped with college applications, who celebrated when I made the honor roll every single semester. But trauma doesn't just disappear because your external circumstances improve. I still woke up in cold sweats dreaming about that gas station. I still flinched when cars pulled away too quickly. I still couldn't form close friendships because I was always waiting for people to leave. I still worked obsessively taking AP classes and extracurriculars, not because I enjoyed them, but because I needed to prove I was worth keeping. I got my first job at 14, lying about my age to bus tables at a local restaurant. The Andersons didn't understand why I needed my own money when they provided everything, but I couldn't explain the panic that came with financial dependence. My mother had left me with $20. I never wanted to be that vulnerable again. By senior year, I'd saved $8,000. I'd also written approximately 50 drafts of my college essay, each one dancing around the truth of my abandonment before finally confronting it head-on. The final version began. When I was 8 years old, my mother left me at a gas station to see if I could find my way home. I've spent the last 10 years finding my way to something better instead. That essay, combined with perfect grades and test scores born from desperate overachievement, earned me a full scholarship to the University of Colorado. Pre-law because I decided I wanted to help kids like me. Kids who'd been thrown away and needed someone to fight for them when they couldn't fight for themselves. The Andersons drove me to college, helped me decorate my dorm room, took pictures like all the other parents. But when they left, I sat on my narrow dorm bed and cried. Not because I'd miss them, though I would, but because I'd made it. That 8-year-old girl abandoned at a gas station had somehow become an 18-year-old with a full ride to college. "Take that, Patricia," I whispered to my empty room. College was where I learned that success couldn't cure trauma. I excelled academically, graduating summa cum laude. But personally, I was a disaster. I dated guys who were emotionally unavailable, drawn to rejection like a moth to flame. I pushed away anyone who got too close, ending relationships the moment they showed signs of deepening. I was perpetually waiting for abandonment, so I abandoned others first. Jake was different. I met him in law school, both of us in our first year at University of Denver. He was patient in a way that confused me, steady in a way that made me suspicious. When I tried to push him away after 6 months of dating, he simply said, "I'm not going anywhere, Savannah. I know that's hard for you to believe, but I'm not." We dated for 3 years. He proposed the night we graduated, getting down on one knee in the law library where we'd spent countless hours studying together. I said yes, caught up in the moment, in the promise of a future that looked nothing like my past. We planned a small wedding, sent out invitations, put a deposit on a venue. Then 2 months before the wedding, Jake mentioned wanting children. Not immediately, but someday, maybe 2 or 3. He painted a picture of our future family, and all I could see was my mother's face in that car window. All I could hear was her voice. "Let's see if she can find her way home." I called off the wedding that night. Jake begged me to reconsider, to go to couples therapy, to at least explain why the idea of children sent me into a spiral. But how could I explain that I was terrified of becoming my mother, that I looked at every mother abandoning their child in the news and thought that could be me, that the genetic predisposition to abandonment might be lying dormant in my DNA, waiting for motherhood to activate it, I threw myself into work instead. By 28, I was a junior partner at Brennan and Associates, specializing in family law with a focus on child advocacy. I represented kids in the system, fought for better placements, sued negligent foster parents, worked pro bono more often than my partners liked. Every case was personal. Every child I helped was 8-year-old me, abandoned and alone, and needing someone to give a damn. My caseload was punishing 60 to 80 hours a week, but work was safer than relationships. Legal briefs didn't abandon you. Court victories didn't require emotional vulnerability. I could help children without risking having any of my own. The Andersons worried about me. Susan would call every Sunday, gently probing about my social life, suggesting I might benefit from talking to someone. Robert would email articles about work-life balance, which I'd delete without reading. They'd given me stability when I needed it most, but they couldn't give me the ability to trust. That had been broken at a gas station when I was 8, and I didn't know how to fix it. I lived alone in a high-rise apartment in downtown Denver, surrounded by the trappings of success. Designer suits and the closet diplomas on the wall, a view of the mountains from my living room window. From the outside, I'd made it. The abandoned girl had grown up to be a successful lawyer. The American Dream foster care edition. But late at night, when the city lights twinkled below and sleep eluded me, I'd find myself thinking about her. Patricia. Mom. The woman who'd given me life and then decided I wasn't worth keeping. I'd hired a private investigator once to find her, then changed my mind before he could report back. What would I even say? Why did you leave me? Was I that unlovable? Did you ever think about me after you drove away? The questions haunted me, but not as much as the potential answers. What if she'd simply forgotten about me, moved on like I was a chapter in a book she'd finished reading? What if she had new children, ones she'd kept? What if she didn't even remember my name? So I buried myself in work and helping other abandoned children navigate the system that had raised me. I became known as the lawyer who never gave up on a case, who fought harder than anyone else for kids nobody wanted. My colleagues thought it was admirable. They didn't understand it was penance, an attempt to save 8-year-old me over and over again, hoping that eventually it would be enough to heal the wound my mother had left. But wounds that deep don't heal from external success. They fester quietly, poisoning relationships, sabotaging happiness, whispering that you're fundamentally unlovable because if your own mother couldn't love you enough to keep you, who else ever could? This was my life at 32. Successful, lonely, haunted. Still that 8-year-old girl at the gas station watching her mother drive away, still trying to figure out how to find her way home to a place that had never existed. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was in my office reviewing depositions for a custody case when my cell phone rang. Unknown number, Florida area code. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was spam. But something, maybe intuition or maybe just procrastination, made me pick up. Hello? There was breathing on the other end, raspy and labored. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 24 years, weathered by time and what sounded like hard living. Savannah. My body went cold. The deposition papers slipped from my suddenly numb fingers, scattering across my desk. I knew that voice. Even destroyed as it was, I knew it. Patricia. I couldn't bring myself to call her Mom. She'd lost that right at a gas station in August when I was 8 years old. Oh, thank God, she breathed. I wasn't sure this number was right. You're a hard person to find, you know. I said nothing. My throat had closed completely, 24 years of unsaid words blocking any sound from escaping. My hands shook as I gripped the phone. Savannah, are you there? Please don't hang up. Please. I need your help. The audacity of those words broke through my paralysis. You need my help. I laughed, but it came out cracked and bitter. You need my help. I know I have no right to ask, she said quickly. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Savannah, I'm dying. I'm in the hospital in Jacksonville, and I'm dying, and I have no one else to call. I stood up so abruptly my chair rolled backward into the wall. Good, I said flatly. Die alone. See how it feels. Savannah, please no. I cut her off. You don't get to please me. You don't get to call me after 24 years and ask for help. You left me at a gas station. You drove away while I screamed for you. You told me to find my way home and then made sure I had no home to find. I know," she whispered. "I know, baby. I'm so sorry. Don't you dare call me baby." My voice was rising, years of suppressed rage erupting. I was 8 years old. 8. Do you have any idea what happened to me? Do you know how many foster homes I went through? Do you know about the group home where older kids beat me? Do you know about the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering what I did wrong? "You didn't do anything wrong," she said, crying now. "It was me. I was sick. Savannah, mentally ill. I couldn't take care of you. Mentally ill people get treatment. They don't abandon their children at gas stations. And even if you were that sick, you've had 24 years to get better and find me. 24 years to say sorry. But you only call now when you need something." "I was ashamed," she said weakly. "So ashamed. And then it had been so long I thought you'd be better off if I stayed away." "Well, congratulations. You were right. I am better off without you. I'm a lawyer now. I help kids whose parents threw them away like garbage. I make sure they don't end up as damaged as I am." "You're not damaged." I laughed again, harsh and disbelieving. "I can't maintain a relationship because I'm always waiting for people to leave. I called off my wedding because the idea of having children terrifies me. I work 80-hour weeks because staying busy means I don't have to feel. I haven't had a good night's sleep in 24 years because I still dream about that gas station. Tell me again how I'm not damaged." She was sobbing now, ugly, gasping sobs that might have moved me if I hadn't cried those same sobs as a child. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything," I said, suddenly exhausted. "What do you want from me?" "Patricia, money organ donation, a deathbed reconciliation that makes you feel better about yourself." "I have cirrhosis," she said quietly. "From drinking. My liver is failing. I need somewhere to go when they discharge me. And treatment, but I can't afford it. I have no insurance, no money, no family. Just you." I sank back into my chair, the irony not lost on me. She'd left me with nothing, and now she had nothing. Poetic justice, perhaps, but it didn't feel satisfying. It just felt hollow. "You have other children," I said. "I hired a private investigator years ago. You had 2 more kids after me. Call them." "Gone," she said. I left them too. Different circumstances, but same result. They won't talk to me. You abandoned 3 children." My voice was faint with disbelief. 3? "I told you I was sick, Savannah. I've been sick my whole life. But I'm trying to get better now. I've been sober 6 months. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to make amends." "Amends," I repeated. "You think a phone call counts as making amends for abandoning an 8-year-old at a gas station?" "No," she said. "No, I know it doesn't. But it's a start. And I hoped maybe you could forgive me. Maybe we could try to have something even if it's not a mother-daughter relationship. Maybe just human to human." I stared out my office window at the Denver skyline, lights beginning to twinkle in the growing darkness. Somewhere out there was that gas station, probably still operating, still serving desperate travelers. Did Harold still work there? Did he ever wonder what happened to the little girl in the butterfly dress? "I need time to think," I heard myself say, though I hadn't planned to say it. "Give me your number. I'll call you back." She gave me the hospital number and her room extension. "Thank you for not hanging up," she said. "Thank you for listening." "I haven't forgiven you," I said clearly. "I may never forgive you." "Don't mistake this for absolution." "I understand," she said. "Just think about it, please." I hung up without saying goodbye and immediately ran to my private bathroom, barely making it before I vomited. 24 years of suppressed trauma came up with my lunch, leaving me shaking and sweating on the cold tile floor. My secretary knocked on my office door, concerned. "Ms. Martinez." "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." I called back, though I was anything but. "Just something I ate. I'm going home for the day." I drove home in a daze, muscle memory, navigating while my mind reeled. She'd called. After 24 years of silence, she'd called. And she wanted my help. The child she'd thrown away like trash was now successful enough to save her. That night I called Susan Anderson. Not Mom, though she'd told me years ago I could call her that if I wanted. I'd never been able to. Mom was a word that had been poisoned for me. I told her about the phone call about Patricia's illness, about her request. Susan listened without interrupting the way she always did, patient and non-judgmental. "What do you think I should do?" I asked. I think Susan said carefully that this isn't really about what you should do. It's about what you can live with. Can you live with helping her? Can you live with not helping her? Which choice aligns with who you want to be? I want to be someone who wouldn't abandon a child at a gas station. Then be better than her. That doesn't mean you have to help her, but it does mean you get to choose based on your values, not hers. I spent the next day researching. Patricia Martinez, 55 years old, was indeed in Jacksonville General Hospital's charity ward. Liver failure from chronic alcoholism, prognosis poor without treatment. She'd been homeless for 2 years, living in shelters when they had space on the streets when they didn't. The private investigator I'd hired years ago had been thorough. Patricia had left me in 1999. In 2003, she'd had another daughter, Melissa, with a man named Tom Bradley. She'd left when Melissa was 5, signing away parental rights. In 2007, she'd had a son, Christopher, father unknown. She'd left him at a fire station when he was 2 weeks old. 3 children abandoned. 3 lives derailed by one woman's inability to mother. I found Melissa on social media, 21 years old now, studying nursing in California. Christopher had been adopted as an infant, record sealed. They were my half-siblings connected by the mother who'd failed us all. I called the hospital, spoke to Patricia's doctor. Without treatment, she had maybe 6 months. With treatment, possibly years, though the damage was extensive. The treatment was expensive, not covered by Medicaid. She'd need somewhere to recover, someone to manage her medications, someone to care. Everything in me screamed no. She didn't deserve my help. She didn't deserve my forgiveness. She didn't deserve anything from the child she'd thrown away. But Susan's words echoed, "Which choice aligns with who you want to be?" I called Patricia back that evening. "I'll pay for your treatment," I said without preamble. "I'll arrange for a recovery facility. But I have conditions." "Anything," she said eagerly. "Anything you want. You tell me the truth. All of it. Why you left me, what happened after everything. No lies, no excuses, just truth. And after that, you leave me alone. This isn't a reconciliation. This isn't forgiveness. This is me choosing to be better than you. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered. "I understand." I flew to Jacksonville that weekend, taking a red-eye Friday night. I hadn't been to Florida since a conference years ago, and the humid air felt oppressive as I walked from the rental car to the hospital entrance. My hands shook as I entered the elevator, pressed the button for the 3rd floor. She was in room 312 at the end of a long, sterile hallway that smelled of disinfectant and despair. I stood outside her door for a full minute, 8-year-old me begging to run, 32-year-old me forcing my feet forward. Then I walked in and saw my mother for the first time in 24 years. She looked nothing like the beautiful woman who'd driven away from that gas station. 24 years of hard living had carved deep lines into her face, turned her skin sallow and paper-thin. Her hair, once thick and dark like mine, was gray and brittle, pulled back in a stringy ponytail. She was skeletal under the thin hospital blanket, her body consuming itself from the inside out. But her eyes were the same, dark brown like mine, like the eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. When she saw me, those eyes filled with tears. "Savannah," she breathed. "Oh my God, you came." I stood at the foot of her bed, maintaining distance like a protective barrier. "Don't mistake this for forgiveness," I reminded her. "I'm here for answers and to arrange treatment. Nothing more." She nodded quickly, desperately. "I understand. Thank you for coming. Thank you for—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop with the gratitude. You don't get to thank me. You lost that right when you drove away while I screamed for you." She flinched but nodded again. I pulled a chair close enough to hear her but far enough that she couldn't reach me. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. "Talk," I said. "Start from the beginning. Why did you plan it?" "Because I know you planned it. The apartment was empty. The school was notified. You planned to abandon me. Why?" She closed her eyes, gathering strength or courage, or maybe just organizing her lies. When she opened them, she looked every one of her 55 years. "Your father left us 6 months before that day," she began. But the truth is, I'd been falling apart long before that. I had you when I was 23, too young, too damaged from my own childhood. My mother, your grandmother, was an alcoholic. My father beat us. I spent my childhood in chaos, and I swore I'd do better with you. But I was already drinking by the time you were born. I didn't know that I said my voice carefully neutral. You hit it well. I was a functional alcoholic for years. Your father helped keep me stable. But when he left, when he said he couldn't handle my mood swings and drinking anymore, I spiraled. I was drinking a bottle of wine before noon vodka all afternoon. I looked at you and saw myself as a child, innocent and trusting, and I knew I was going to destroy you the way my mother destroyed me. So your solution was to abandon me at a gas station. I told myself it was for your own good. She laughed bitterly. I convinced myself that you'd be better off in the system than with me, that foster parents would love you the way I couldn't. I even researched gas stations, picked one where I knew someone would help you. That old man Harold, I'd seen him be kind to other children. I thought I was saving you from me. You thought wrong. My voice was ice. I went through 9 foster homes in 4 years. I was beaten, neglected, forgotten. I aged out of childhood at 8 years old because I had to. You didn't save me from anything. You just added abandonment to whatever damage you might have caused by staying. She was crying now, not the manipulative tears of someone seeking sympathy, but the broken sobs of someone facing the magnitude of their failures. I know, she whispered. I know that now. At the time there was a man, David. He promised me a new life in Florida, but he didn't want kids. Said he'd take care of me if I came alone. You sold me for a man. The words came out strangled. I was sick, Savannah. Sick in my mind, sick from alcohol, sick with self-hatred. I thought if I could start over, become someone new, maybe I could be happy, and you'd be free of me. What happened to him? This David. He left after 3 years, said I was too much work, too damaged. The words came out mechanical, like she'd told this story before, probably to therapists. I was pregnant then with Melissa. I tried to be a better mother to her, stayed sober for almost 2 years. But when her father left, I fell apart again. Left her with him when she was 5. Signed away my rights for $1,000 that I drank away in a month. And Christopher... She closed her eyes. I was homeless then, prostituting for drug money. I didn't even know I was pregnant until I was 7 months along. I left him at a fire station because I was high when he was born and terrified they'd arrest me if I went to a hospital. 3 children, I said. 3 children you created and threw away. I'm a monster, she said simply. I know that. I've destroyed everything I've ever touched. But I'm trying now. 6 months sober, the longest I've managed since I was 20. I go to AA meetings in the hospital. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to become human again. Why call me? Why now? Because I'm dying, she said. And I realized I'd never said sorry. I'd never explained. I'd never given you the chance to scream at me, hit me, tell me how much I hurt you. You deserved that chance. I don't want to hit you, I said tiredly. I don't want to scream anymore. I did that for years, into pillows in foster homes and therapy sessions in empty apartments. I'm tired of being angry. I just want to understand how a mother can drive away from her screaming child and never look back. She met my eyes then, and for the first time I saw the truth beneath all her excuses. I looked back, she said quietly, in the rearview mirror. I saw you running after the car, saw you fall. I almost stopped. My foot moved to the brake, but I knew if I stopped, I'd never be able to leave again, and staying would have killed us both just more slowly. So I pressed the gas and told myself you'd be fine, that you were strong, stronger than me. I told myself that lie every day for 24 years. But you never checked, I pointed out. You never made sure I was okay. I was a coward, she said. I was terrified of what I'd find. What if you were dead? What if you were homeless? What if you were happy? I couldn't face any of those possibilities. So I hid in bottles and pills and told myself you were better off not knowing I was alive. I stared at this stranger who'd given birth to me, this broken shell of a person who'd shaped my entire life through her absence. I'd built so many versions of her in my mind over the years. The monster who didn't care, the victim who couldn't cope, the stranger who'd forgotten I existed. But the reality was somehow both worse and more pathetic than any story I'd created. "I've arranged for you to be transferred to a treatment facility," I said, pulling out the paperwork I'd prepared. "It's a good program, 90 days inpatient, then transitional housing if you stay sober. I'll cover the costs." "Why?" she asked. "After everything, why would you help me?" "Because I've spent 24 years becoming everything you're not," I said. "I help abandoned children. I fight for the thrown away. I refuse to become someone who walks away when things get hard. You taught me that in the cruelest way possible. You taught me exactly who I never want to be." She reached out then, her thin hand extending toward mine. I pulled back instinctively, and she let her hand drop. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that leaving you is the biggest regret of my life, bigger than the drugs, the alcohol, the other children I failed. You were my first baby, my beautiful Savannah Rose, and I destroyed us both that day at the gas station." "You didn't destroy me," I said firmly. "You tried to, but I survived. I more than survived. I thrived despite you, not because of you. And now I'm choosing to help you because that's who I am, someone who helps even those who don't deserve it. But after this, we're done. You don't contact me. You don't show up at my office or my home. You take this chance to get better, and you live with your choices, and you leave me alone." "I understand," she whispered. I stood to leave, gathering my purse and documents. As I reached the door, she spoke one more time. "Savannah, can I ask, are you happy? Despite everything, did you find happiness?" I turned back to look at her, this ghost from my past who'd haunted me for so long. "I'm working on it," I said honestly. "Every day I'm working on it. Some days are harder than others. Some days I'm still 8 years old at that gas station. But I have a life, a career, people who chose to love me, even though I struggle to believe I'm lovable. That's more than you ever gave me, but it's what I gave myself." Then I walked out of room 312 down the long hallway, into the elevator out of the hospital, and into the humid Florida evening. I sat in my rental car for 20 minutes, sobbing for the little girl in the butterfly dress, for the mother who couldn't love her, for the 24 years of pain that had led to this moment. But when the tears stopped, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not closure exactly, but a loosening, like a fist that had been clenched for so long had finally begun to open. Patricia would go to treatment. Maybe she'd stay sober, maybe she wouldn't. Maybe she'd help other abandoned mothers. Maybe she'd abandon more people. But whatever she did, it wouldn't be my responsibility anymore. I'd faced the monster from my nightmares and found not a monster at all, but a pathetic broken woman who'd spread her damage like a virus to everyone she touched. But viruses can be treated. Cycles can be broken. And I was living proof of that. I flew back to Denver that night, watching the lights of Jacksonville disappear below. Somewhere down there, my mother was lying in a hospital bed alone with her choices. And somewhere ahead, I was flying toward a life I'd built without her, a life that was mine to shape. The flight home gave me time to process what had just happened. I'd seen my mother, spoken to her, arranged her treatment, and somehow the world hadn't ended. I hadn't fallen apart. I hadn't reverted to that terrified 8-year-old girl. I'd stayed myself, the woman I'd fought to become. When I landed in Denver, there was a voicemail from Susan Anderson. "Just checking in, honey. Robert and I are here if you need anything." I called her from my car, still sitting in the airport parking garage. "I saw her," I said when she answered. "I saw Patricia. How are you feeling?" "I don't know," I admitted. Empty, full, angry, relieved, everything and nothing all at once. "That sounds about right for something this complicated," Susan said gently. "Do you want to come over? I made too much lasagna as usual." For the first time in days, I smiled. Susan always made too much lasagna when she was worried about someone. It was her love language, feeding people who were hurting. "That sounds perfect," I said. The Andersons' house hadn't changed much in the 15 years since I'd moved out. Same comfortable furniture, same wall of family photos that now included my law school graduation, same smell of books and coffee and something baking. Robert hugged me at the door, his accountant's precision replaced by fatherly concern. "You look tired," he said, studying my face. "I just confronted my biological mother for the first time in 24 years. I think tired is acceptable. Over lasagna and red wine, I told them everything. Patricia's appearance, her story, the other children she'd abandoned. Susan held my hand when I described seeing her so sick and broken. Robert's jaw clenched when I explained about the man she'd chosen over me. "But you helped her anyway," Susan said, not a question, but an observation. "I helped her because I could," I said. Not because she deserved it, but because choosing not to help would have made me more like her. And I've spent my whole life trying to be nothing like her. Robert raised his wine glass. "To breaking cycles," he said simply. We clinked glasses, and I felt something shift in my chest. These people who'd taken in a damaged 12-year-old and loved her into something resembling wholeness. They were my real parents. Biology was just genetics. Family was choice, and they'd chosen me when my biological mother couldn't. I stayed that night in my old room surrounded by remnants of my teenage self. Honor roll certificates, debate trophies, a photo of me at prom in a dress Susan had spent weeks helping me alter to fit perfectly. Evidence of a childhood salvaged, if not saved. The next morning I went to therapy. Dr. Sarah Chen had been my therapist for 5 years, the only one who'd managed to get past my walls enough to actually help. I told her about the phone call, the meeting, the decision to help. "How do you feel about your choice?" she asked. "Right," I said immediately. "It feels right. Not good, not satisfying, but right." I didn't help her for her. I helped her for me to prove that I'm not her, that I can choose compassion even when someone doesn't deserve it. That's a powerful realization, Savannah. You've taken control of the narrative. She abandoned you, but you chose to help her. She had all the power when you were 8. Now you have it. "I don't want power over her," I said. "I just want to be free of her." "And are you free?" I considered the question. I'm getting there. For the first time, I actually believe I'm getting there. The treatment center called 2 days later. Patricia had been transferred, was settling in, was attending sessions. They thanked me for my generous payment and assured me they'd take good care of her. I told them not to call me with updates. Whatever happened next was her journey, not mine. I threw myself back into work, but something had changed. The desperate edge was gone, the need to save every abandoned child as a proxy for saving myself. I still worked hard, still fought for my clients, but I also started leaving the office before 8 p.m. I started accepting invitations to drinks with colleagues. I even agreed to a blind date that Susan had been trying to arrange for months. His name was James, another lawyer but corporate, not family law. Divorced, no kids, understood baggage because he carried his own. The first date was coffee safe and easy to escape if needed. But I didn't need to escape. He was funny smart, didn't push when I was vague about my family history. "I have a complicated relationship with my biological parents," I said when he asked. "Join the club," he replied. "My father's in prison, and my mother thinks essential oils cure everything, including fraud charges." I laughed, really laughed for the first time in longer than I could remember. We dated slowly, carefully. I told him about the abandonment on our 5th date, watching for the moment he'd realize I was too damaged, too much work. Instead, he said, "That must have taken incredible strength to survive. No wonder you're so fierce in court." 3 months in, I panicked. This was usually when I ran, when the fear of abandonment became too much and I left before I could be left. I showed up at his apartment ready to end things. "I can't do this," I said when he opened the door. "I'm too damaged. I'm going to ruin this. You should find someone easier, someone who doesn't wake up in cold sweats from nightmares about gas stations." He stepped aside to let me in, then calmly poured 2 glasses of wine while I spiraled. "Are you done?" he asked when I finally stopped talking. "What I asked, if you're done listing reasons why I should leave. Because if you are, I'd like to list reasons why I'm staying." He proceeded to list 27 reasons, ranging from how I take my coffee too much sugar, not enough cream, to how I fight for kids nobody else wants. Number 27 was, "Because you're brave enough to let yourself be loved, even when you don't believe you deserve it." I cried. He held me. We didn't break up. 6 months after meeting Patricia, I got a letter forwarded from the treatment center. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Her handwriting was steadier than I expected. The letter was short, clearly worked on, with a therapist's guidance. "Savannah, I'm respecting your boundary by not contacting you directly, but the program suggested I write this letter for my own recovery, whether or not I send it. I decided to send it through the center in case you might want to read it someday. I'm 60 days sober today. I've been sober before, but this feels different. Maybe because I'm dying, maybe because I finally faced what I did to you, to Melissa, to Christopher. I attend therapy every day. I'm working the steps. I'm trying to become someone who deserves the second chance you gave me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. But I wanted you to know that you saved my life, not just by paying for treatment, but by showing me that my children survived despite me. You became extraordinary. You proved that cycles can be broken. I think about you every day. Not with guilt, though, there's plenty of that, but with something like pride. I have no right to be proud of you, I know that. But I am. You became everything I couldn't be, and while I can't take credit for that, I can at least witness it. Thank you for choosing to be better than me. Thank you for showing me that my legacy doesn't have to be abandonment. It can be you choosing to help someone who hurt you. That's the story I want to leave behind your strength, not my weakness. I love you. I've always loved you, even when that love was poisoned by my sickness. I loved you as I drove away, loved you through 24 years of silence, love you now. It wasn't enough. Love without action is just noise, but I wanted you to know, be happy, my brave girl. Be everything I couldn't be. You already are. Patricia. I read the letter 3 times, then put it in a box with the note she'd left in my backpack 24 years ago. 2 bookends to a story I was finally ready to close. James found me crying over the box that evening when he came over with takeout. Good tears or bad tears, he asked, setting down the food. I don't know. Both. Neither. She says she loves me. Do you believe her? I think she believes it, I said. I think she loves me the only way she knows how, which is barely at all. But that's not my problem to solve anymore. He kissed my forehead, then started unpacking Chinese food. You're pretty amazing, you know that, because I helped the woman who abandoned me because you chose to become someone worth loving instead of someone who abandons. That's not easy. That's heroic. I thought about that word. Heroic. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who'd survived something terrible and was still figuring out how to live with the scars. But maybe that was its own kind of heroism, the daily choice to be better than what broke you. Patricia completed the 90-day program. I know because they sent me a certificate of completion that I immediately threw away. She moved into transitional housing. I know because they charged my credit card. After that, I don't know what happened to her. I asked them not to contact me again, and they respected that boundary. A year after that hospital visit, James proposed. Not in some grand gesture, but quietly over morning coffee, sliding the ring across the kitchen counter like it was the most natural thing in the world. I know you have feelings about marriage, he said. I know you're scared. But I also know I'm not going anywhere, and I'd like to make that official if you're willing. What if I turn into her? I asked, my deepest fear finally voiced. What if we have kids and I abandon them? What if it's genetic, this inability to stay? Then we won't have kids, he said simply. Or we'll adopt older kids who need homes, or we'll foster, or we'll get a dozen dogs. I don't care about the specifics, Savannah. I care about building a life with you, whatever that looks like. I said yes. The wedding was small, just the Andersons, James's sister, and a few close friends. I walked myself down the aisle, nobody to give me away, because I'd learned to belong to myself. My something old was Harold's teddy bear tucked into my bouquet, a reminder that kindness existed even in the worst moments. 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant. Unplanned. Despite precautions, the universe's idea of a cosmic joke. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the positive test terror flooding every cell of my body. James found me there an hour later. I can't do this, I said. I can't be a mother. I don't know how. I only know how mothers leave. He sat beside me on the cold tile. Then we'll learn together. We'll read books, take classes, go to therapy. We'll figure it out. What if I can't love it? What if I look at our baby and feel nothing? What if you love our child so fiercely that it rewrites everything you thought you knew about yourself? He countered. What if you're already a mother to every kid you fought for in court? What if the fact that you're terrified means you'll never take parenthood for granted the way Patricia did? We named her Hope. It was cheesy and on the nose and perfect. The first time I held her, I understood something fundamental. Patricia had been wrong. It wasn't that she couldn't love me. It was that she couldn't love anyone, including herself. The love I felt for Hope was immediate, overwhelming, and terrifying in its intensity. I would die before I left her at a gas station. I would die before I drove away from her tears. But the fear didn't disappear. Every day I checked myself for signs of Patricia's sickness. Was I drinking too much? Was I pulling away? Was I looking at Hope and feeling trapped? The answer was always no, but I checked anyway, vigilant against genetic predisposition. Hope is 2 now. She has my dark hair and James's green eyes and a laugh that sounds like pure joy. Sometimes I catch myself staring at her, amazed that I created something so perfect that my body knew how to build love, even when my mind didn't trust it. The fear has faded, but not disappeared. It probably never will completely. It's my reminder, my alarm system, my insurance against becoming Patricia. But it no longer controls me. I control it, channel it into fierce protection, into presence, into the 1,000 small acts that make up motherhood. I still work in family law, still fight for abandoned kids, but now I come home to my own child. I read her bedtime stories, sing her lullabies, promise her I'll always come back when I leave. Always, baby. Mama always comes back. 6 months ago, I got another forwarded letter. The treatment center had closed, but someone tracked down my office address. The letter was from a hospice in Jacksonville. Patricia died on a Tuesday, the same day of the week she'd first called me. The hospice said she'd been sober until the end, 18 months total. She'd volunteered at a shelter sharing her story with other homeless mothers. She'd written letters to Melissa and Christopher, though they'd been returned unopened. She'd died alone, but peaceful, the note said, as if that mattered. I didn't go to the funeral. There probably wasn't one. But I did something else. I took Hope to that gas station, the one off Interstate 70. It had been renovated, turned into a modern travel center, but the bones were the same. The spot where she'd driven away was now a Tesla charging station. Harold had long since died, according to the current manager, but he remembered him. Said he was the kind of man who kept pictures of all the kids he'd helped over the years. I wondered if my picture was among them, the girl in the butterfly dress with the scraped knee and broken heart. I stood in that parking lot holding Hope on my hip, her chubby fingers playing with my necklace. This was where it happened, where one story ended and another began, where Patricia had abandoned me thinking she was teaching me a lesson about survival. She had taught me something, just not what she'd intended. She'd taught me that love requires action, that promises mean nothing without follow-through, that children deserve better than parents who run away. She'd taught me that some people are placed in our lives not as examples, but as warnings, lighthouse beacons, showing us where not to sail. "Mama, why are we here?" Hope asked in her sweet toddler voice. I kissed her forehead, breathing in her baby shampoo smell. "We're here so Mama can remember something important. What, that I'll always come back for you. No matter what, baby. Mama always comes back. Promise." I looked into her trusting eyes, so much like mine, so much like Patricia's, but filled with something neither Patricia nor 8-year-old me had ever had. Security. The absolute certainty of being loved. "I promise," I said. "Cross my heart. Hope to die, stick a needle in my eye." She giggled at the rhyme, not understanding the weight of those words, the promise I was making to her and to myself and to the ghost of a little girl who'd stood in this same spot 26 years ago. We drove away from that gas station, but unlike Patricia, I kept looking back. Hope waved bye-bye to the building, and I watched in the rearview mirror as that place of abandonment grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. But it would never really disappear. It would always be part of my story, the ground zero of my trauma, and paradoxically my strength, because I had found my way home, just not the way Patricia had intended. I'd found my way to the Andersons, to James, to Hope, to a version of myself that could love and be loved despite everything. The drive home was quiet, except for Hope's babbling about trucks and clouds and birds. Normal toddler observations that felt like miracles. She would never stand in a parking lot watching my car disappear. She would never wonder what she did wrong. She would never doubt that she was worth staying for. That night, after Hope was asleep, I told James about the visit to the gas station and Patricia's death. "How do you feel?" he asked, our traditional question when processing difficult things. "Free," I said, and meant it. For the first time in my life, I actually feel free. Patricia had told me to find my way home that day, her final words before driving away. It had taken 26 years, but I'd finally understood what home really meant. It wasn't a place or even a person. It was the choice to stay, to love, to build something from the wreckage. It was the decision to be better than what broke you. My mother abandoned me at a gas station when I was 8, saying, "Let's see if she can find her way home." She thought she was teaching me about survival, but she taught me about resilience. She showed me exactly who I never wanted to become, and in doing so, shaped exactly who I am: a mother who stays, a woman who fights for the abandoned, a survivor who chose to thrive. The story could have ended differently. I could have become her, perpetuating the cycle of abandonment, letting trauma write my future the way it had written my past. But I chose a different ending. I chose love over fear, presence over absence, healing over hurting. I chose to be the mother I'd needed, the adult I'd searched for, the happy ending I'd deserved. Some people say you can't choose your family. They're wrong. Family is the ultimate choice. It's choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. It's showing up when you're scared. It's loving someone else's child as your own, the way the Andersons loved me. It's building something beautiful from broken pieces. Patricia gave me life, then tried to take it away. But I took it back, rebuilt it, made it into something she could never have imagined. That's my revenge and my redemption, my wound and my wisdom. That's my story, the one I'll tell Hope when she's old enough to understand that sometimes people leave, but that doesn't mean you're not worth staying for. Years from now, when Hope asks about her grandmother, I'll tell her the truth. That Patricia was sick, that she made terrible choices, that she left children like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale forest. But I'll also tell her that Patricia's leaving led to my becoming. That sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is their absence, the space to become who you're meant to be without their shadow. I'll tell Hope that we are not our parents' mistakes. We are not doomed to repeat their failures. We are capable of breaking cycles, of choosing differently, of loving better. We are proof that abandonment doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be. But I still wonder about the other children, Melissa and Christopher, my half-siblings connected by abandonment. Are they okay? Did they find their way home too? Maybe someday our paths will cross 3 survivors of the same storm, comparing scars and strengths. Maybe we'll realize that Patricia gave us each other the only gift she had left to give siblings in survival, if nothing else. Or maybe we'll never meet, and that's okay too. We each have our own journey, our own way of processing what she did to us. But I hope wherever they are, they've found what I found. Love that stays, people who choose them, the knowledge that they deserved better, and the strength to create it for themselves. This is what I've learned in the years since that gas station. Trauma doesn't have to be your identity, but it can be your teacher. Pain doesn't have to be your prison, but it can be your power. Being abandoned doesn't mean you're not worthy of love. It just means you were loved by the wrong person. And sometimes the wrong person leaving is the only way the right people can find you. The Andersons found me because Patricia left. James found me because I learned to stay. Hope found me because I chose to face my fears instead of running from them. My life, the good and beautiful life I've built, exists because of and despite that moment at the gas station. So thank you, Patricia. Thank you for leaving. Thank you for showing me who not to be. Thank you for the trauma that became my strength, the abandonment that became my purpose, the cruelty that taught me kindness. Thank you for driving away and never looking back, because it forced me to look forward. I found my way home, just like you said. It just wasn't the home you imagined or the journey you intended. It was better. It was mine. And every night when I tuck Hope into bed, when I kiss her forehead, and promise to see her in the morning, when I keep that promise by being there when she wakes, I honor the 8-year-old girl who stood in that parking lot. I give her what she needed retroactively through my daughter. I heal backwards and forwards simultaneously. That's the ultimate triumph over trauma, not forgetting it, but transforming it into something useful. Not pretending it didn't happen, but refusing to let it happen again. Not forgiving necessarily, but moving forward anyway. Patricia is gone now. Her story ended in a hospice bed in Florida alone, as she'd chosen to be. But my story continues, rich with the love she couldn't give, full of the people she couldn't be. And Hope's story is just beginning, built on foundation of presence, not absence of staying, not leaving of love that shows up every single day. We are 3 generations of women connected by blood, but separated by choices. Patricia chose to leave. I chose to stay. Hope will choose her own path, but she'll do it knowing she's loved, wanted, worth every sacrifice. She'll never stand in a parking lot wondering why she wasn't enough. She'll never have to find her way home because she'll never be abandoned in the first place. That's how cycles break. Not in grand gestures, but in daily decisions. Not in perfect healing, but in imperfect trying. Not in forgetting the past, but in choosing a different future. My name is Savannah Rose Martinez Anderson Chen, and I am 32 years old. 24 years ago, my mother abandoned me at a gas station to see if I could find my way home. I found something better instead. I found my way to myself, to love, to a life worth living. I found my way to becoming the mother I needed, the woman I wanted to be, the survivor who didn't just survive, but thrived. And if that 8-year-old girl could see me now, holding my daughter, surrounded by chosen family, professionally successful, personally healing, I think she'd be proud. I think she'd understand that the worst day of her life was also the first day of becoming who she was meant to be. I think she'd know she found her way home after all. What defines us isn't what happens to us, but what we do with what happens to us. Patricia defined herself by leaving. I defined myself by staying. And that has made all the difference. To everyone watching who's been abandoned, rejected, thrown away, hear this: you are not what they left behind. You are what survived. You are not their failure. You are your own success story waiting to be written. You can find your way home even if home looks nothing like what you expected. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is their absence, because it makes room for all the people who will choose to stay. And you deserve people who stay. We all do. So here's my question for you. What cycles are you breaking? What patterns are you changing? What legacy are you creating from the wreckage of what was done to you? Share your story in the comments below. Let's build a community of survivors who became thrivers of the abandoned, who became advocates of the broken, who became brave. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of triumph over trauma. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their past doesn't determine their future. And remember, you are worthy of love that stays, promises that are kept, and people who choose you every single day. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. Thank you for witnessing my journey from abandoned to advocating, from left behind to moving forward, from broken to brave. May you find your own way home, whatever that looks like for you. And may home be everything you deserve, full of love, healing, and people who never drive away.